Hi, Tanya. You look like you're having a bad day.
I wish I was only having a bad day.
What happened?
Well, it seems that I've become a victim of identity theft. That's what the police called it.
What are you talking about?
Someone got a hold of my credit card number and racked up more than $5,000 in charges.
What? That's awful. How did someone get your credit card number?
Well, I'm not sure, but about a week ago I heard someone going through my garbage can. Out in front of my house. I didn't think anything about it at the time. Just kind of a strange incident. But the police seemed to think that whoever searched through my garbage found one of my credit card receipts and took my number from it.
As you know, sociology is divided up into many sub-disciplines. One of these sub-disciplines few people know about until they take up the study of sociology is military sociology. And as in any discipline, there are opposing views about the basic concepts being studied. Okay, for instance, sociologists who specialize in military sociology often debate whether the military should be viewed as more of an occupation or as an institution. Most people involved in the debate lean in favor of the military being an occupation. This is supported by 6 key elements that shape the character of the military profession. Now, make sure you take all of these down. The first is that there is a defined area of competence based on expert knowledge. Second, there is a system of continuing education to maintain that competence. Third, those in the military have an obligation to society. The fourth, there is a system of values that perpetuate professional character. Next, the fifth, there is a strict framework that the occupation functions within. And the sixth, the last one, the profession has control of a reward and punishment system and is allowed to determine the quality of those entering the profession. Do I need to repeat that? Listen to each conversation. Then choose the best answers to the questions. Listen to part of a conversation between a man and a woman. Hey, Marcy, were you able to keep up with what Dr. Phillips was saying in his lecture today?
He was talking pretty fast, but I was able to get down the main ideas of what he was talking about. However, I'm not sure what I wrote down. I haven't had a chance to review my notes yet. Do you need to borrow them from me?
No, I wrote down almost everything he said. I suppose my real question is whether you understood everything that he was talking about, because I'll be honest, some of the details he outlined about the pancreas and its role in the production of the hormones and enzymes confused me a bit.
Oh, well, we can meet in the library after dinner and look the notes over together if you want. Maybe that will help clear things up for you.
Number 1. What are the speakers mainly talking about? Listen to part of a conversation between a professor and a student. Jim, did we have an appointment this afternoon? No, sir. I just had a follow-up question about this morning's lecture. Okay, I have a few minutes to spare. What is your question? Well, you didn't explain very clearly why independent wool producers were not able to compete against the industrial producers. Oh, okay. Well, it is very simple. Independent wool producers all turned out varying qualities of wool because the spinning wheel was not an efficient machine. Mechanized production, which characterized the Industrial Revolution, was much more constant, so it turned out a dependable product. Secondly, there was very little profit to be made as an independent producer, so very few people stayed with the job for very long. Number 2. What are the two people mainly discussing? Listen to part of a conversation in a housing office.
Yes, can I help you?
I sure hope so. I just came back from the winter vacation and the key to my dorm room doesn't work. I don't know what the problem is.
Okay, let's see if we can sort out the problem. What is your name and your room number?
Stan Perkins, and my room number is 233 in Beaumont Hall.
Aha, I think I see the problem. Well, Stan, they changed the lock on you because your tuition for this semester hasn't been paid yet. Once that is cleared up, I'll be able to issue you a key to the new lock. Sorry.
It's not your fault, thanks. I guess I need to make some phone calls and clear this up. May I borrow your phone? Number 3. What is the main reason that the student visited the woman? Listen to each lecture, then choose the best answers to the questions. Listen to part of a lecture in a physiology class.
So, what you are saying is our brain structure determines how social we are? How much we enjoy being in a group or how many friends we like to have?
Well, not the entire brain structure, but parts of the brain are definitely involved with how we interact with people, either friends or strangers. Based on recent studies, our desire to socialize is probably directly related to a particular part of the brain called the amygdala. The studies showed that the more social a person is, the larger the size of their amygdala. And this only stands to reason, The amygdala is located at the very center of other parts of the brain that assist us in friendship, networking, and socializing. What these studies have not shown us, and this is important, is whether or not the larger amygdala causes us to be more social, or if being more social causes us to have a larger amygdala. Number 4. What is the main idea of the talk? Listen to part of a lecture in an art class.
Professor Jensen, I know that the Musée d'Orsay is a very famous art museum in Paris, second only to the Louvre, but I don't really know what the difference is between the collections featured in the two museums.
Let's see. Well, the primary difference between the two museums, besides the physical size of the two museum complexes, is that in the Louvre you can see works of art that span the many different artistic periods of mankind, okay? But in the Musée d'Orsay, you can see exhibits that focus only on the second half of the 19th century, roughly between 1848 and 1905. There are a lot of Impressionist and Post-Impressionist works on display there. But the museum is not limited to paintings. You can find all different kinds of art there, regardless of technique or means of expression.
I see. So the Musée d'Orsay does have sculpture and ceramics, in addition to paintings.
Right. But besides some exceptions, the art was all created within the years I mentioned. Number 5. What is the talk mainly about? Listen to part of a lecture in a biochemistry class. Okay then, now that you have a basic understanding of what an enzyme is, can anyone give me some examples of where the study of enzymes might come in handy? Nobody. Still have the first day of class jitters, huh? Okay, but I expect some feedback in our next class. Now, enzymes. Well, there are a number of practical reasons for why we would study enzymes. What should spring to everyone's mind, whether or not they feel confident enough to raise their hand and tell me, is that enzymes play a very significant role in our study and practice of medicine. For instance, many of the most common metabolic diseases, such as diabetes, are caused completely or in large part by the presence of defective enzymes. In other diseases, the cause is attributed not to defective enzymes, but to the fact that a certain enzyme or selection of enzymes is missing altogether. In connection to the healthcare industry, you can see why the pharmaceutical industry would also be interested in studying enzymes, right? Would anyone care to tell me why this would be so? Number 6. What is the lecture mainly about? Listen to part of a conversation between two friends.
Ted, what are you doing here? It's a warm, sunny Saturday, and you have been sitting in your room all day staring at the wall. Come outside.
And do what? There is nothing to do.
You know, Sir Francis Bacon said that the worst solitude is to be destitute of sincere friendship.
Give me a break, May. Do you think I would be sitting in here if I had any sincere friends to hang out with? Just leave me alone.
Well, you are not going to make any friends sitting here by yourself. Let's go over to the student union.
Why?
Because there is a big activities bulletin board hanging in there. I'm sure that we can find something that you are interested in doing.
You think so?
I know so. That board has all kinds of stuff on it. Book clubs, hiking groups, team sports, all kinds of fun stuff.
I don't know, May.
You know, Ted, I don't think you're looking at the possibilities you have here at college. You're on your own here. When you were at home with your family before coming here, what did you do?
Well, I did whatever work around the house my dad told me to do, and my homework.
No, I mean for fun.
Oh, my family went on a lot of picnics, to the mall, to the movies. You know, the usual stuff.
That's okay, but did you choose to do that stuff?
No, I just did what my parents told me to do.
Well, here you get to decide what activities you want to do and who you want to do them with. I'm sure the activities you did with your parents were nice, but it is time for you to do what you want to do. You have the control now, so take Francis Bacon's advice.
You mean make friends?
That's exactly what I mean. Let's go.
Number 1. What problem does the man have? Number 2. What does the woman suggest the man do? Number 3. Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
Because there is a big activities bulletin board hanging in there, I'm sure that we can find something that you're interested in doing.
You think so?
I know so.
What does the woman imply when she says this?
I know so.
Listen to part of a lecture in an astronomy class.
One of the most common questions asked by visitors here at the National Space Science Museum is, why are astronauts weightless? You're probably thinking to yourself, astronauts are weightless because there is no gravity in outer space, right? Well, that is not exactly true. And in fact, the opposite is true. There is gravity in space, which is why the space shuttles are able to make regular orbits of the Earth. Without the force of gravity, they would float off into space and be lost to us forever. But gravity is connected to the original question in that astronauts are weightless because they move freely under the influence of gravity. The term commonly used to describe this weightless condition is free fall. Let me try to explain it to you as clearly as I can. Imagine I was standing on a weight scale in an elevator that is at the top of a skyscraper such as the Empire State Building, okay? Now, I would see my weight on that scale. I'm not going to tell you my weight, so don't ask. Then, suppose someone cuts the elevator cable for some reason. What do you suppose I would see on the scale during my free fall down the elevator shaft? Wait, before you answer, think about what is taking place. Not only am I falling, but the scale is also in free fall. Everything is accelerating freely. We are ignoring the effects of air friction and other types of friction for the sake of this example. You can now say that I am no longer standing on the scale. Instead, I'm falling with it, and thus it reads 0 because I'm weightless. If you stop and think about it, the only reason anything on Earth weighs anything is simply because the ground gets in the way of what gravity wants to naturally do, which is to pull us and everything else to the center of the planet. In fact, when you stand on a scale, the weight that you see on the readout is merely the equal and opposite reactions of the Earth getting in the way of free fall.
Number 4. What is the main point of the lecture? Number 5. Why does the lecturer mention the elevator? Number 6. What can be inferred about air friction and other types of friction? Listen to part of a conversation between two friends.
Hi, Boris. What are you working on?
This It's a semester-long assignment for my class with Anthony Russell.
Russell? So it's a writing class?
Yeah, writing nonfiction. He assigned us daily journals.
Oh, sure. I took that class when I was a sophomore. I really enjoyed it. Did he explain the importance of keeping the journal?
Of course, he said that it is one of the best exercises we can do to improve memory, clarify thinking, increase creativity, and, well, all of that other stuff that teachers tell you to get you interested in an assignment. It sounded good at first, and I've been trying to write something worthwhile, but this thing has just become, just really boring and stale. Who has something interesting to write about every day?
I went through the same thing when I had to do the assignment, but there are things you can do to spice it up and get the most out of the exercise.
Would you happen to be open to, well, sharing some tips?
Certainly. Well, start with the basics. First, write every day, which you already know. Aim for a number of lines or pages when you sit down to write. You know, have a goal.
Yeah, I know about the structure and about being consistent, but how do I make it more interesting? I go to class every day and work part-time in the library. Nothing really exciting happens on a daily basis.
Okay, there are lots of tricks you can use. For instance, you can write pretend conversations you're having with famous people. Doesn't matter if they are living or dead.
You mean like pretend to have a conversation with, Theodore Roosevelt? Or John Wayne? Or
anyone you want. That's the beauty of it.
That's actually an interesting idea.
Yeah, and try to write under different conditions if you have the chance.
What do you mean?
Well, write when you feel just normal, like now, but also try to write if you are really tired or angry, sad or upset, in the various frames of mind. That helps you to evoke different emotions and insert them in your writing.
Okay, yeah, I think I get it. These are some great ideas, Beth. Do you have any more?
Well, you want to vary your entries in time. Like, try to write about the future, the past, and, of course, the present.
Okay, that sounds easy enough.
But when you write about the future, don't just write things like, I have to work today from noon to 4 in the library. You can write true things, but also try to be outlandish about the future. Write about how you're going to be an internationally famous author with huge houses in Switzerland and the Greek Isles. Go all out with your imagination.
Hold on. Let me write these ideas down. Okay, anything else?
And add illustrations. Draw in the margins of your journal.
I'm not much of an artist.
You don't have to be. The pictures that you draw, even childish doodles, help your mind grasp other ideas, other topics to write about. It's all about making your brain more active. Drawing and writing are both creative activities, so you can actually use them to kickstart each other.
Okay, I'll give the drawing a try. By the way, what kind of grade did you get on this journal assignment in Russell's class? Number 7. What are the speakers mainly discussing? Number 8. Why does the man mention Theodore Roosevelt and John Wayne? Number 9. What are the ways to spice up your otherwise boring journals? Choose 2 answers. Number 10. Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question.
Okay, there are lots of tricks you can use. For instance, you can write pretend conversations you're having with famous people. Doesn't matter if they're living or dead.
You mean like pretend to have a conversation with, Theodore Roosevelt or John Wayne or...
Anyone you want. That's the beauty of it.
What does the woman imply when she says this?
That's the beauty of it.
Number 11. What is the woman's opinion towards the assignment? Listen to part of a lecture in a history class. Now that the break is over, let's continue our discussion of the different uses of history. As I began to explain in the first half of the class, contemporary society is sometimes portrayed as being dominated by the experiences brought forth by change. The breakneck speed of technological innovations and developments, the relentless erosion of traditional loyalties and values, the fickleness of elected officials, and the instability of international relations are all, from time to time and in turn, cited as evidence that we live in a world that is radically different from the world of the past, a world in which a sense of history and the lessons which can be learned from it are dispensable. Now, this is a very superficial assessment, to say the least. We can see in all spheres of life, from personal relationships to political decisions, we are busy constantly interpreting our experience in a time perspective, no matter if we are conscious of it or not. The mere fact of living alongside people older than we are makes us conscious of the past, of a time before ourselves. Our sense of personal identity demands that we possess roots in the past, which are sought first through genealogy and personal family history. We all know that it is impossible for us to understand a situation in life without some perception of where it fits into a continuing process or whether it has happened before. We normally assume that we get to know a person based on their behavior over time, not from just some of their actions that stand out. Our own sense of what is practicable in the future is formed by an awareness of what has already happened or not happened in the past. In short, we learn by experience. If you think about it, to assert the indispensability of history is just another way of saying that what holds good for us as individuals applies with equal force to our lives as members of society as a whole. History is collective memory. It is the storehouse, the shared storehouse of experiences through which people develop a sense of their social identity and their future prospects in their society. Now, those who profess to ignore history are nevertheless compelled, whether they know it or not, to make historical assumptions at every turn. Our political decisions and judgments are permeated by a strong sense of the past. It doesn't matter whether we are deciding between the different competing claims of political parties or making an assessment of the feasibility of specific policies. The past holds influence. All of us are curious about how our society came to be the way that it is, for better or for worse, and we all have different explanations concerning the subject. These explanations may sometimes be ill-founded or half-baked, to say the least. The pace of contemporary change does not render the past irrelevant or unimportant, but merely shifts the perspective from which we weigh its influence and interpret its lessons. For instance, racial conflict in modern British and American society is due not only to unequal opportunities for housing and employment in the present, but also to the legacy of plantation slavery and colonial rule, which played a hugely overwhelming part in molding racial attitudes for both black and white people. Another example of how looking at the past is useful in the present is when assessing what can be done to rescue an ailing economy. To improve a bad economy, it is useful to look at the past, make assessments and interpretations of how and why it has reached its present negative condition. You see, if you want to fix a problem, common sense tells us that we have to know what caused the problem in the first place. Okay, another point which needs to be made is this. Whereas an individual's sense of his or her past arises spontaneously, historical knowledge has to be produced with effort. Society has a long past. It extends back far beyond the lives of the individuals who happen to populate it at any given time. So the raw materials from which a historical consciousness can be formed are accordingly almost unlimited. The elements of the past which find a place in it represent a selection of truths which are deemed worthy of note, at least by those who collected the elements for us to ponder. Okay. Now this applies to you as history students. Who produces that knowledge and who validates it for general consumption and contemplation by society are therefore important questions. How well the job is done has a bearing on the cohesion of society and its capacity for renewal and adaptation in the future. That is why what historians do should matter to everyone else, whether they have strong personal interests in history or not. What I mean is, the work of historians can be manipulated to promote desired forms of social consciousness. For non-historians, the historian's work can become the basis for informed and critical discussion of current issues. Number 12. What does the professor mainly talk about? Number 13. Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question. Our political decisions and judgments are permeated by a strong sense of the past. It doesn't matter whether we are deciding between the different competing claims of political parties or making an assessment of the feasibility of specific policies. The past holds influence. Why does the lecturer say this? The past holds influence.